3.4 seconds. For an infallible mathematical engine, that delay, an eternity. Inside the grand cathedral of the Oracle core, a low, grinding hum of strained processing vibrated through the floorboards. 400 Terra Prime Vanguard recruits stood in perfectly aligned rows, waiting for the machine to assign the next Royal Guardian. None of them spoke. From the central spire dropped a single crystalline token. Gideon Cross, it read. The Ethel nobility lining the upper balconies exchanged rapid, silent glances. Within seconds, the geometric silver-blue pattern of the ether link burned itself into the skin of his left wrist. The brand pulsed with a cold, clinical authority, chaining his biological vitals directly to Princess Lyriel. You'll want to hear how this ends. Trust me on that. A cramped, windowless servant's closet down a forgotten maintenance walkway became his designated quarters. Not a single complaint left his mouth. He simply unpacked a weathered canvas duffel, paced the exact dimensions of the floorboards twice to test for hollow spots, and secured the heavy latch. The Ethel retainers assumed the human understood his lowly place in the rigid hierarchy of the spires of Ethelgard. Princess Lyriel ignored him entirely during their first 3 security briefings. Her advisors communicated strictly through rapid-fire data absolutes, their flawless posture reflecting a society built on calculated certainty. To them, Gideon's distinct lack of holographic threat assessment pads signaled a primitive intellect. How could a guardian protect the crown without a constant stream of environmental analytics projecting into his retinas? He watched the room with bare, organic eyes, cataloging exit routes and structural weak points instead of reading data streams. They calculated probabilities. He memorized blind spots. 2 weeks later came the Solstice Gala. Beneath floating luminescence, the Highborn gathered to discuss the 40-year border conflict. Prince Varys held court near the crystalline fountains, his voice smooth and measured. Gideon stood by the southern archway, a rough shadow against the polished marble, deeply uncomfortable in the stiff, unfamiliar cut of his formal tunic. Through the crowd slipped a servant with a tray of spiced wine. Something about the attendant's gait lacked the engineered grace of the palace staff. The poison cup never reached the princess. The ceramic blade, Gideon caught with a bare hand. The assassin dropped before the royal guard, even unholstered their weapons. Silver blood pooled on the immaculate tiles. While the Ethel nobility panicked at the sight of sudden violence, Gideon casually ripped a strip of silk from a decorative banner. He bound his bleeding forearm tight, shrugging off a lethal dose of neurotoxin as if dealing with a paper cut. An hour later, the heavy oak doors of the royal study locked from the inside. Princess Lyriel bypassed the digital projectors entirely, moving straight to a hidden compartment beneath her desk. She withdrew a roll of heavy, physical paper. Across the surface spread hand-drawn star charts mapping a hidden trade route. Graphite smudges and the faded oil of her late mother's fingerprints marked the margins. These were the coordinates that could bypass the contested space, the only path to ratifying a lasting peace accord. And Prince Varys, she explained in a brittle whisper, had ordered the strike to ensure these maps burned with her. 40 years of blood for a border no one needs, Lyriel whispered. Her thumb traced the faded oil of her mother's fingerprints. If Varys burns these, 100 systems burn with them. Gideon nodded slowly. He reached up, tugging at the stiff collar of his formal tunic, and adjusted the metallic clasp on his left cuff. Dyed the palace luminescence. An electromagnetic pulse sheared through the royal spires, severing every primary power grid. Total darkness. Without their optical data streams and environmental analytics, Ethel physiology froze. Millennia of engineered perfection had effectively eradicated their natural night vision adaptations, leaving Lyriel entirely blind, shivering in the sudden sensory void. But human adrenal glands operated on an older, uglier logic, immediately flooding Gideon's bloodstream with cortisol and epinephrine. In the absolute absence of light, his raw, uncalculated instinct took over. "Move," he ordered. He dragged the princess into the hallway. Through the forgotten maintenance walkways bled the silence of a dead palace. They didn't run toward the fortified panic rooms. Instead, he led her straight into his cramped servant's closet. The Ethel had called it lowly. Gideon had recognized it as a flawless choke point with 0 sniper sight lines and impenetrable reinforced stone. Outside the heavy latch, the tactical boots of Varys' elite ghost teams echoed on the polished marble. Into the narrow, suffocating ventilation shafts, Gideon vanished. He didn't use thermal optics or infrared goggles. He listened for the intake of breath, the faint friction of synthetic armor, the micro-vibrations traveling through the floorboards. From the pitch-black ceiling shadows dropped a heavy, blunt force. Ceramic cracked against stone. Knees buckled. 3 elite operatives collapsed, their weapons stripped, before they ever registered a human target. A single, sharp gasp escaped Lyriel as Gideon dropped back into the closet, wiping a stolen ceramic blade on his trousers. "Their armor hinges squeak," he whispered, a perfectly calm observation in the middle of a coup. "Makes tracking them trivial." The princess stared into the darkness, finally comprehending his primitive gaze. He had never needed a threat assessment projection because he had mapped the physical world. Varys never even made it past the atrium. Surged the auxiliary generators. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in a harsh crimson glow, revealing the neatly incapacitated strike teams. Palace security swarmed the royal quarters, taking the treasonous prince into immediate custody. The Imperial Council would ratify the peace accord by morning. The heavy oak desk bore the weight of the ancient, hand-drawn star charts. A single drop of silver blood stained the bottom margin, drying permanently next to the faded fingerprints of a dead queen. Beside the cracked parchment rested a bruised, heavily calloused hand. Around its wrist, the geometric silver-blue pattern of the etherlink pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm. The soft, azure light cast a matched, synchronized glow across the dust-covered faces of the 2 standing guardians.